I know I promised we'd talk about the economy, but we gotta talk about last night first. Let's do it on the weekly update. Okay, friends, let's talk the Trump market. Here's what you need to know. First up, Donald Trump has probably been elected the 47th president of the United States. And I say probably there only because at the end of this election cycle, I'm not sticking my neck out on anything. So I'm using the probably there, but it looks like it's pretty well wrapped up at this point. Here's the election results. We've basically got Donald Trump looking like he's going to win it. And we are not a political channel, and we are not political-based investors in any way. The only reason why we're covering this is there's a very strong market effect that is happening right now. And so I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. I wanted to get ahead of it before you get what I might consider some bad advice from everywhere else. One thing I will say about this election, every election is really just a tally of who shows up. And CNN actually had some really great graphics last night where they showed basically the map of every county in the United States. And Kamala did not outperform Joe Biden in any single county anywhere, whereas Trump actually had, quite significant outperformance in some very interesting places last night. So an election is basically a census of who shows up. The Republicans were clearly very energized, and now we're seeing that in the market. Presidents are one thing. More important and impactful to me would be Congress. That's who really controls the purse strings here. And this is something that I'm going to be watching very closely. The House isn't fully settled just yet, but I want to see if we get a Republican majority out of this. Now, that's going to be very interesting if we get one, and it will basically give sort of a rubber stamp to the Trump agenda once he gets in. That's probably the more important economic and market moving data. Let's see how the House resolves. So Trump is in. What's he going to do? Well, the good news is we've got some data, some analysis on what his policies are and how they're going to operate. So let's just kind of go through them one by one. 10-year net cost of Trump's proposals is $7.75 trillion. Now, the way that I am interpreting this data, this tells me that there's going to be a very strong stimulative push out of the government spending sector. And that's probably pretty good. Kamala was going to deficit spend as well. Remember, last time I talked about, they kind of read out of the same economic hymnal. But what I will say is, we've got a little bit of an economic slowdown that's happening right now. So this extra government-based stimulus will be positive. We want to be careful, though, that it doesn't turn into a lot of inflation. Total cost of tax cuts plus spending measures amounts to $10.4 trillion. That's a big agenda. Let's look at some of the big ticket items here. First up, corporate tax rate from 21 to 15% for domestic manufacturers. That's a pretty big move there. Exempting tips from income taxes. I'm curious. There's a lot of things that we want to not tax. Both sides talked about this. I'm curious how much of it gets done. This stuff might go down. This stuff might age as gracefully as paying off the student loans did in the Biden administration. But we want to exempt tips from income taxes. We want to exempt overtime from income taxes. I would be really surprised if that one gets done. And we want to end taxes on Social Security benefits. Again, I would be pretty surprised if that one gets done, but we'll see. I think it's really going to depend upon what happens in Congress. Boosting military spending, yeah, that one seems pretty obvious to me. So the tax rate and the military spend seems pretty obvious to me. These big ticket items, these big tax cuts, we'll see if those happen. So that's the good. That's what he's giving. What's he taking away? Well, that's what I've got here in orange. A total of $3.7 trillion in revenue offsets would come mostly from tariffs, $2.7 trillion. Now, those tariffs are going to be interesting because ultimately it's the consumer who pays the tariffs, right? We raise the tariff on the goods. The tax only really gets levied by the importers, exporters. And so when when we basically increase their costs, they're just going to pass it on to their consumers, and eventually it's going to get down to the American people. So it'll be interesting to see what the net impact of this is, but I would say that that's probably a boost to inflation. And remember, last week we talked about, what was happening on the long end of the curve in interest rates, those growth and inflation expectations. Growth is great. We love growth, but that's some of those inflation expectations coming in there. Canceling Inflation Reduction Act outlays. Depending upon how you're politically aligned, that might just be an outright positive because, maybe the private sector might be a little bit more efficient than the public sector. Tax credits for electric vehicles, energy and electricity production, $700 billion taken away there. We'll see what Elon has to say about that and disbanding the Department of Education. A weird one. That one seems a little pandery to me. We'll see if it happens, but at least this is the menu. If we look at what's happening in the market, we don't generally look at the market on a news review, but we're going to look at it today. I think some of this move is correct and some of this move is incorrect. So let's talk about what I think is correct. The market moving higher is correct. I've talked about that very often. You know, whoever gets in, however they get in, there's a positive event because now the uncertainty is removed. And I think as we get through today, we're removing, hopefully, some of the uncertainty around contested elections. So I think that's the good move that's happening today. And clearly in the Mag 7 and the broader markets, yeah, that looks correct to me. It's some of this stuff over here, the individual names, there's some massive moves happening on the individual names that look a little bit more suspect to me. So I'll just give you an example of what I mean. Geo Group and CXW, these are private prisons. You can see they're having a fantastic day. These are some of those so-called Trump trades. I'm interested to see how many of these Trump trades actually stick. I mean, these are way outsized moves. What this reads to me, we have to remember post-pandemic, there's a lot of gamblers in the market. This seems a little bit gambly to me. I don't know necessarily that that's actually standing on terra firma. You can see things like Capital One Financial, so there's some consumer names there. That's interesting to me, given the tariffs. You know, you've got Revolve, a retailer there, Discover Financial Services, Capital One. So some of this looks a little suspect to me. I'm not surprised that the market is doing it. This is the market after the pandemic, but it's a little interesting to me. Over here on the losers, one of the big losers that we see in the market is pretty much, Sunrun, solar, green energy, all the rest of that. Certainly removing some of those government stimulative benefits is going to impact those guys. But it really seems like today, outside of maybe the broader indexes and outside of broad things like maybe industrials, energy, materials, some of this stuff looks like we're shooting first and we're going to ask questions later. So I'd be interested to see the longevity of some of these moves. So what does it all mean looking at the Trump market? Well, Trump has probably won the 2024 election, but I believe that the congressional shifts are actually the more impactful thing here, and I'm going to be watching those pretty closely to see how this all resolves. Trump's spending plan is bold and should support growth, but tariffs might create a heavy inflation tax, right? So we're going to see how this resolves in the next 4 years. I believe the immediate knee-jerk election stock rally we are seeing today is a little dangerous, but much of the rally is correct. And some of those broader, more sane sort of ideas, I would say. And overall, remember, you never want to mix your politics and investing. And this is actually why I want to do the video today. Every news source you see is going to scream at you for the next several weeks that you need to do something and change stuff and move stuff around. I don't know about that. You know, the market did fine. If we look back at history, the market did fine under George W. Bush, outside of the global financial crisis. The market did fine under Obama. The market did fine under Trump's first term. The market did fine under Biden's presidency. The market will do fine under Trump's second term. The market would do fine if Kamala won. So I don't really see the knee-jerk, hey, we need to change a whole bunch of stuff now. We're going to do some pivots. We obviously, if Trump is going to get the mandate to spend all this money, we want to capture that. And I look forward to telling you about all of that stuff on a future episode of the Weekly Review. Take care. We'll see you later. Okay, friends, that was the video. Hope you liked it. If you found it informative, good, entertaining, I'd love if you could scroll down here beneath the video and give me a like there. It helps us out with the algorithm. And then if you want to be notified first of anything new that we upload to the channel, if you come over here, click subscribe, you'll be the first to know as soon as we upload anything. Appreciate it. See you soon.